What's up there? Thank you for clicking on the video and thank you for following the channel. I'm David Greene. This is the David Greene Show and we are Real Talk Real Estate. And today we're going to be talking about trade wars as the trade war with China and America heats up every day. New news hits the nation, people panic, and countries are choosing sides. Is this the beginning of World War III or the first step towards American prosperity? We're going to find out in today's video, where we go over several different news updates on what the hell is going on between China and the US, what we did, what they did, and how things are falling out. Kind of some cool stuff going on that I'm happy to share with everybody today. It was not something that I ever saw coming. I can just tell you that. We're going to get into it. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, please do me a favor and do so now. We go live just about every single day, bringing you updates on what's going on with the economy, with real estate, etc. Unfortunately, right now, there is not a ton to talk about in the world of real estate because ain't nothing much happening. Inventory's not moving. Inventory is kind of stacking up. Prices aren't in a free fall, but they're slowly going down. Rates go down, then they go back up. There's not a lot of investment opportunity out there, just waiting to be grabbed. And there's also not a lot of other options. So in the meantime, while we're waiting to see what's going to happen in the housing market, let's talk about what's going to happen in the economy that might lead to a shift in the housing market. By the way, stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe to the channel because I am working on a video now to talk about what could happen that would cause rates to go back down. Because in my humble opinion, we're probably not going to see a lot of movement in the housing industry unless one of two things happens. We get a whole lot more people working, making a lot of money and buying housing, which is going to take a while before we get there, or interest rates come down and they get us out of this vapor lock that we are stuck in. That's more likely to happen sooner than the first one that I mentioned. So let's pray that something good comes to shake us out of this spot that we're in now. First video. China hits back at the U.S. and they're going to raise tariffs on us.
China is raising its tariffs on U.S. imports, escalating President Trump's trade war. The stock market opened down, then shot back up today in what's been a roller coaster of a week. As ABC's Christiane Cordero reports, the trade war with China has no end in sight, and it's already getting costly on many fronts.
Today, the back and forth between the U.S. and China is fueling ups and downs on Wall Street. Markets started down again today after plunging yesterday and erasing much of the gains from a brief Wednesday afternoon rally when President Trump's worldwide tariffs were first paused. The S&P 500, where millions of Americans have their 401ks, has now lost almost $3.5 trillion in less than a week. J.P. Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon today said the economy is facing, quote, considerable turbulence ahead. Beijing overnight retaliated on the U.S.'s 145% total tariff on Chinese imports, with a 125% tax on U.S. goods coming into China. President Trump vows the market turmoil and higher prices will be worth it.
Again, there'll be a transition cost and transition problems, but in the end, it's going to be a beautiful thing.
Chinese President Xi Jinping says, quote, there are no winners in a tariff war and warns going against the world will only result in self-isolation.
In announcing the latest tariff hike, China's Commerce Ministry again said.
Let me know in the comments as you're watching this. Do you believe that there are no winners in the trade war or the tariff war? Because it kind of looks to me like China's been winning this entire time. They've been tariffing us. We haven't been tariffing them. They've been selling all of their stuff to America, and we've been making them wealthy as we stop working. Seems to me like they have pretty clearly been winning. But is it true that there are no winners in a tariff war?
Said China would fight to the end, but the statement also suggested that this might just be China's last tariff increase, saying if the U.S. raises rates higher again, China will simply ignore it.
The administration says dozens of countries are now eager to strike new deals on the new baseline 10% tariff on just about every U.S. trading partner. ABC's Rachel Scott this morning asked Trump's top trade representative if China is among them.
Is the U.S. engaged in negotiations with China?
Not at this point.
If a deal between Presidents Xi and Trump can't be made, prices are expected to spike on everything from clothes to toys to electronics. One example, since most iPhones are assembled in China, the iPhone 16 Pro Max could soon cost at least $800 more than its $1,200 retail price. Christiane Cordero, ABC News, Washington.
The stock market managed to rally today in another chaotic week. All three indexes ending with gains. The Dow closing over 40,000 once again, gaining more than 600 points. The Nasdaq is up more than 300 points, and the S&P 500 gained about 100 points.
China just raised tariffs on all U.S. goods to 125%. Chinese officials say if the U.S. insists on damaging its interests, they will retaliate and fight to the end. The new tariff will take effect tomorrow, the latest escalation in what is now an all-out trade war. This week, President Trump announced he was raising tariffs on Chinese imports to 100%.
Do you believe that? Are we in an all-out trade war, like the news are telling us? Or have we said we're going to put tariffs on people? They came to negotiate. We paused the tariffs for 90 days. We're kind of filling things out. They may just drop the tariffs that we have on them. We may be like, great, we're not going to put tariffs on you either. And the only difference that falls out of all of this thing dominating the news cycle and driving people that hate our president absolutely bonkers is that Americans don't have tariffs placed on them by other countries, and we end up manufacturing things to sell there and create jobs and create wealth in our country.
45%. That means consumers in both countries will likely pay far more for certain things.
Back to the news. China says it is set to increase tariffs to 125% on U.S. goods. The move expected to affect American farmers and companies.
NBC's Vaughn Hilliard tells us about the escalating trade war with China.
Rounding out a wild week on Wall Street, another shot across the bow. The trade war between the world's two largest economies is ramping up yet again.
China has decided to up the ante, raising the additional tariff.
China overnight striking a higher tariff on the United States, raising the tax on American goods from 84% to 125% in response to the U.S. tariffs already in place. The moves sending markets into a tailspin as investors and businesses try to navigate the moving targets. President Trump today on social media claiming we are doing really well on our tariff policy, calling it very exciting for America and the world. But the president of China, Xi Jinping, responding for the first time, warning China doesn't fear economic suppression, adding there are no winners in a tariff war. With China one of the main importers of U.S. goods, that move is likely to affect American farmers and companies. For small businesses, the tariff tit for tat already hitting home.
I'm checking every invoice for tariff charges. It's real.
Amy Saldana, founder of Kitty Wampus Toy Store in Minneapolis, Minnesota, is anxious.
It's not like we can say, oh, we're just not going to buy from one country. We'll pivot to another country, especially when that country is China, which produces so many of our inventory products.
Analysts predict that ultimately higher costs will be passed on to consumers and raise the price of goods. In Washington, Vaughn Hilliard, NBC News.
Another rising concern on the impact tariffs will have, the price of medication. Some estimates show the U.S. imports about a third of the pharmaceuticals on the market. Pharmacist Daniel Jones says his biggest concern is seeing issues with.
Question here. If you're not aware, we're going to operate from the premise here that let's say the majority of advertising that's done by mainstream cable news, this would be your big, like your CNNs, your CNBCs, your MSNBCs, your Fox Newses. If you haven't noticed, a lot of the commercials are really happy people in pharmaceutical situations. Okay. Like big pharma is by most people believed to run the news channels. And so I can't imagine that if you're big pharma and you know that almost all of the medications that come into America are coming from China, and it's a huge, huge industry, that you're excited about tariffs being placed on your medicine that's coming in to make it more expensive so that insurance companies aren't going to pay for as much of it. You got to take a huge hit to your profit margin in order to sell it to the people that are going to need it, because most people buy it through insurance. So insurance is kind of a filter that stops it from becoming from them paying more than they want to. So the pharma companies are probably going to take a big profit. If you know that, a big hit to their profit. If you know that, and you don't like it, do you think that you might put some influence on the news media to portray tariffs only in as negative of a light as possible?
With the supply chain.
You're going to have people that, number one, might not be able to afford their medication anymore. And number two is who's going to supply the medication from where they were getting it in the past. And number three is possibly who's paying for it.
He says what could be a $4 drug could soon be a $14 medication. He also says big manufacturers are in China, and so the tariffs will have an impact on consumers.
Another up and down day on the financial markets as Wall Street reacts to President Trump's tariffs. Overnight, Beijing retaliated to the U.S.'s 145% tariff on goods imported from China with a 125% tariff on products imported from the U.S. The White House says more than 75 other countries have reached out to negotiate their tariffs.
Phones are ringing off of the hooks. They've made it very clear they need the United States of America.
U.S. consumer sentiment is down almost 11% in 1 month and 34% in the past year. Analysts with investment bank UBS project the iPhone 16 Pro Max, which is currently retails for about $1,200, will jump another $950.
All right, so iPhones possibly going up to $2,000. Currently, iPhones are financed as it is. So nobody is paying that much money up front most of the time when they buy these things. Is this causing you to panic that your payment's going to go up every month? I don't know what that's going to be, 10, 15, 20 bucks or so. Or is that a bit of a fear factor that may be coming your way? All right. I thought this was a really interesting video. This was anecdotal stories of what's going on in China regarding the factories where the things are made, responding to the acts of the UF tariffs being placed on them.
Last month, I took an order for a batch of copper parts. I've already bought all the materials. It cost tens of thousands, and everything has been cut, ground, washed, and engraved. It's not finished yet, but today the customer messaged me and said the delivery might be delayed. After customs clearance, the taxes have gone up too much. A TikToker who works as a bulk trade supplier shared in his video the huge pressure he's under after the sudden increase in U.S. tariffs.
订单量5000多万美金，今年我们订单已经排到了26年的5月份。
Our orders are worth over $50 million US dollars. This year, we're already booked through May 2026. But with this 30% tariff hike, the impact on us is huge. If you're a small startup, it's not such a big deal because you don't ship enough to fill an entire container. But for us, it hits hard. Our profit margins in bulk trading are already razor thin. Now with a 34% tariff, it's like getting knocked to the ground.
He said the only thing he can do for now is wait. His backup plan is to ship through third-party warehouses in other countries. That's the only way forward. On April 7th, the owner of a clothing factory posted a video saying the entire foreign trade apparel industry in China is filled with anxiety.
现在做外贸单的 Everyone doing foreign trade now is nervous. A 50% tariff is just scary. Who's going to place orders under these conditions? Sure, some clothing businesses are still busy, but it's hard to make money anymore. US orders only make up part of our business, but there are so many clothing factories in China. If we all turn to Europe and there's no US orders, then think about it. Won't competition at home become even worse? Domestic sales are also weak this year. People just don't have money to spend.
All right, so in previous lives, we had some of the people that hate the tariffs commenting that the U.S. is not the only place that buys Chinese goods. So if we put a tariff on their goods and they can't send them here like they used to, well, other people in the country will just, or other people in the world will just buy them, as if that's as simple as the argument is. Like, well, the Europeans will buy it. Well, here's the thing. They're already buying them. They have a certain number of factories, a certain number of workers, a certain number of jobs, and a certain amount of their GDP that is dedicated towards producing things to ship to other countries, probably more than anything else that they do. When you think of China, what do you guys think of? Do you think of amazing ingenuity that comes up with incredible product design like Italians and Germans? No, you think of them ripping off other people's design ideas. They're not the IP people. When we think of China, we think about the country that makes things the cheapest and sends them everywhere else. So other countries have been buying their stuff, yes. But what else does China really do good? Do they make amazing movies? Do they make incredible software? Most people that I talk to say the Chinese steal ideas from other people, copy it, and make it cheaper than other people do, and then they send it there. So if that is true, as we're talking about in this video, they're already sending things to Australia, to Europe, to Russia, to Canada. Well, the US is the biggest person. So if we stop buying as much as we have been buying from them, they can still sell to other countries. But what if that equals 50% of their factories and their jobs and their orders are coming from America? Well, theoretically, if that was true, 50% of what they're doing goes away. All those people get laid off. All those workers that get laid off, they need to go find a job. Where are they going to go? They're probably going to look for another factory, right? So you're the factory worker, factory owner, I should say. And let's say your factory primarily ships things to Canada, not the US, so you're not affected. Well, you're now being flooded with a whole bunch of workers who don't know how to do much but work in a factory. And they're like, I'll take the job. I'll take it for half as much. You lay off the person that you've been paying more, even though they don't get paid much. You hire the person that's working for half as much. The Chinese government collects half as much income tax. You got another person that's unemployed. What are they going to do? You create a war where all of the workers are fighting for all the jobs, which pushes the wages that the factory owners pay lower and lower and lower, and puts pressure on the Chinese government to find new jobs for all of these people or provide for them themselves. They're a communistic country, right? The government's supposed to provide this stuff. Can you see the turmoil that would create in a country that is primarily known for making cheap stuff in factories and sending it to other places? If a country like the US says we're not going to buy it, or if we are, it's going to be way more expensive. That's, I think, what Trump is looking at here. Is it going to hurt us? Yeah. Is it going to hurt them? Yeah. The question we should be asking ourselves is, who's it going to hurt worse, and who can go the longest in the pain before blinking?
So how can this market possibly improve?
On April 2nd, U.S. President Donald Trump announced a new round of global-based tariffs, raising rates on dozens of countries. At the time of the announcement, the actual tariff rate for China stood at 34%.
在现行适用关税税率基础上，加征34%关税。
In response, the Chinese Communist Party announced on April 4th that it would impose a matching 34% tariff on all goods imported from the U.S. Trump then warned that he may raise tariffs on China by another 50%. The CCP responded by saying it's ready to fight to the end. While the Chinese government is showing a tough stance, many businesses in China are already feeling the pain. On April 7th, a TikToker filmed a clothing factory that had shut down and said the clothing industry is in serious trouble. All the machines in his factory are about to stop. He said this year is going to be incredibly tough. That same day, another TikToker posted a similar scene, workers moving goods around inside a clothing factory. He wrote that as soon as the U.S. swung its tariff hammer, the impact finally hit the apparel industry. His factory originally had orders scheduled through the end of July, but now over 6,000 down jackets have been put on hold, and their ready-to-ship products are piling up in the warehouse. He said both offline and online sales are struggling this year. Even live stream selling isn't working anymore. With sluggish consumer demand and weak domestic sales, the foreign trade slowdown is pushing more exporters into the domestic market, creating even more excess production. He said this year's apparel industry is like a pressure cooker that could blow at any moment. This isn't just panic, it's worse than during the pandemic. Many clothing business owners may lose everything they've built over a lifetime.
People seeing anybody seeing potential war with China.
Another TikToker showed the current situation at his factory. Because of the tariff hike, orders have been delayed or canceled. Now his packaging and printing factory doesn't even have boxes to make. All he can do now is clean the factory. A TikToker shared a video saying that after the U.S. increased tariffs, the impact on China's foreign trade is obvious. He mentioned that when he flies, there are hardly any Westerners on the plane, mostly people from Africa. Also, when entering the U.S., Chinese people face especially strict security checks.
I'm at Guangzhou Baiyun Airport right now, and the flight is about to take off. This tariff increase is really affecting China. If you look around, you can see there are almost no white faces here, mostly African brothers. This shows how tough the foreign trade situation is right now. When I went through customs, they saw my yellow skin and Chinese passport and gave me a hard time. They asked about every little detail: why I'm here, who I'm visiting, where I'm staying, how long I'll be, and what business I'm doing. Traveling abroad is already hard, and now people like me in foreign trade have to face Trump's 54% tariff hike and random checks.
On April 6, a female owner of a laser cutting factory, Liu Ting, posted a video saying that manufacturing in China is going to get even harder, and she plans to sell off her 30,000 watt equipment.
是的，你们没有听错，我可能要把去年4月份买的大图的激光要准备出掉了。
Yes, you heard me right. I might have to sell the laser equipment I bought last April. I don't need to explain. You can probably guess why. The economic environment is bad, and the trade war has already started. Soon, all manufacturing businesses, especially small ones, will face bankruptcy. This is not an exaggeration. It's the reality. She also said that starting this month, all manufacturing businesses in China will face an unprecedented winter. More and more companies will go bankrupt, lay off workers, and downsize. Many manufacturing owners will end up with insufficient funds and will not survive. Cases in banks, law firms, and courts will pile up. The TikToker estimates that all manufacturing business owners are currently in an anxious, confused, and helpless state. Particularly for factories that relied on foreign trade orders, the shrinking foreign demand and declining domestic demand are making it difficult. Many small business owners can't sleep because of worries and fear. They're afraid all the years of hard work will go to waste. They fear they won't be able to pay employee wages or cover rent and utilities. The TikToker revealed that with electricity costs for her equipment already reaching her limit, she has decided to sell her 30,000 watt laser equipment. On April 8th, a TikToker from Zhejiang shared a video saying that she suddenly realized the U.S. tariff increase has also severely impacted non-exporting manufacturers.
浙江这边的厂，这个关税加上去之后。
How big of an impact has the tariff increase had on local factories in Zhejiang? I run a small factory and don't deal with foreign trade, so I'm not sure how much it would affect me. But I've noticed that my upstream suppliers who export raw materials haven't received any orders for a long time. Not even one container has shipped out. When they can't get orders, they try to switch to domestic sales. Now people at their factories are still working non-stop, running around to try to make domestic sales. So when they get involved in the domestic market, doesn't that just drag the domestic factories into it too? Everyone's getting caught in the spiral, and in the end, we'll all collapse together. The impact is really huge, and some people probably haven't realized it yet. Whether it's the impact on their foreign trade or on our factories that don't deal with foreign trade, it's all very significant. On April 7th, a TikToker from Foshan visited a newly built factory district and recorded footage of the vacant and neglected factory buildings.
He said, "Look at these factories that were just built last year. Now I can't even find a single person. There are no cars or people on the road. Some of these factories are single-story and others have multiple floors. The landlords spent nearly 1 billion yuan to build these. Just a few years ago, these beautiful buildings were all leased out by middlemen. You had to wait in line to rent a factory space, but now there isn't a single customer coming to view the space. The new factory buildings behind me haven't even been renovated yet because the landlords are afraid of spending money if no one rents them. With the manufacturing industry in decline, every industry is struggling."
He recalled that some Chinese companies moved to Southeast Asia to avoid the U.S.-China trade war a few years ago. Now, this new wave of tariffs is a heavy blow to those companies because some countries have even...
This is a very interesting observation. What if we see more of this? What if China doesn't come negotiate with the U.S. and they say, you know what, we're not going to negotiate with you. In fact, we're going to put more tariffs on you, even though we don't really import very much stuff to them or export much stuff to them. And that would force the Chinese companies to leave China to go to a country that has free trade with America. Like, there could be a method to the madness with this pressure that we're putting on them. So if you're a Chinese company, you can't sell to the US because your items are tariffed when they get there, but you just move your headquarters to another country that doesn't have tariffs from the US. That country gains all the jobs and all the wealth, and America just does free trade with them. that would put a lot of pressure on the Chinese government to try to stop the bleeding of losing some of their companies and the tax revenue that would be going to another country.
Higher tariffs than China. He questioned where these companies should go next, stay in Southeast Asia, move back to China, or shift to Africa. On April 7th, Ms. Gong, a manager of a Bluetooth headphone export company in Guangzhou, told Radio Free Asia that most companies in Guangdong that used to trade with the U.S. have stopped accepting orders due to tariff barriers. She said, "I had dinner with people from the industry yesterday, and they told me that they used to export products from Vietnam to the U.S. Now most of those orders have stopped. They're not taking new orders. They're just waiting to see how serious the situation will get. Right now, we know that foreign trade companies in Guangzhou and Guangdong are temporarily not accepting orders." Ms. Gong also mentioned that a Hong Kong company near her recently moved its factory to Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, and is currently hiring.
02 Bison. Any relation to Street Fighter? Curious. Do you know Mr. M. Bison? Says, if these business owners are feeling the pressure, why aren't they teaming up and asking the Chinese government to make a deal with us? Lots of crying, but no solution positions over there. I'm not a politician. I can't imagine the Chinese Communist Party is taking calls and super concerned about the voting constituents of the Chinese people. I don't think they're listening to anything that their people say. I think they tell them, you get what you get and you don't throw a fit.
Vietnamese locals. However, the sudden increase in U.S. tariffs has put the factory in a difficult position. She said they just built the factory in Vietnam, and now they're about to start operations. But now the U.S. has increased tariffs by 46% on Vietnam, so it's impossible to avoid the high tax rates. The investment they made earlier is now wasted.
Another point. Is it possible that our administration anticipated that if we just put tariffs on a couple countries, they would just move their operations to other countries, and Chinese-owned companies would operate out of somewhere that doesn't have a tariff, send the stuff to the U.S., and then the Chinese government would still tax them, just like an American company that is overseas? Is it possible that we thought ahead like a chess player and said, hey, if we don't tariff everybody, then the people we do tariff will just move to the places that we don't, and they'll just send from that area. So we put tariffs on every single country across the board to limit the escape routes and the ways around it and the loopholes, anticipating this would happen to try to force China to come to the negotiating table.
According to Trump's announced plans, the U.S. will implement differentiated tariffs on different countries and regions, with China at 34%, the EU at 20%, Taiwan at 32%, Vietnam at 46%, Switzerland at 31%, the UK and Brazil at 10%, and Japan, South Korea, and India at 24%. Additionally, Trump announced a minimum 10% tariff on all goods entering the U.S. However, on April 7th, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent stated that nearly 70 countries have already reached out to the U.S. to discuss negotiations on Trump's latest tariff policy. He revealed that President Trump will personally participate in the talks to secure the best bargaining position for the U.S. Many Southeast Asian countries, including Vietnam, Indonesia, Thailand, the Philippines, and Malaysia, have expressed willingness to make adjustments and negotiate with the U.S. Despite Vietnam's proactive efforts to reduce U.S. import tariffs, the White House refused to offer reciprocal concessions, citing non-tariff cheating. U.S. Trade Advisor Peter Navarro recently said that Vietnam's issue lies in non-tariff methods, such as Chinese products being exported via Vietnam and the theft of U.S. intellectual property. His comments highlighted that the Trump administration not only sees tariffs as a tool to resolve trade imbalances, but is also trying to prevent country of origin laundering and reshape global manufacturing and supply chains. On April 6, a TikToker who runs a granulator production factory posted a video saying that due to the U.S. tariff policy, her factory has been working overtime to meet the demand from orders from Southeast Asia. Today is the second day of our holiday, but all our staff have been urgently called back to the factory to work overtime because of the tariff increase. Last night, our Southeast Asian customers called, asking us to hurry up and produce and ship. The boss said we should prioritize foreign orders. The big factories we work with are also working nonstop. I don't know what's going to happen next. Do you understand what this means? Some viewers commented under.
Right. So they know tariffs are coming, so they're trying to get as much stuff shipped out as possible. before that happens. So everybody's working overtime, but then they may all lose their jobs because the companies are going to lay them off until they know if their president's going to negotiate with us. So it puts the president of China in a difficult position. If he wants to play tough and play hardball, his own country is probably going to turn against him. It's going to be very politically unpopular because they're all going to be getting laid off because they know that America buys their stuff. And the only reason they have their jobs is because Americans buy things from them. If he does come to the negotiating table, the people will like him more, but then he loses face with some of the people that are expecting him to be strong. They want him to stand up to President Trump. It makes him look like a punk. And this is the same problem that our president gets put in a lot of the time. If he holds his ground and he plays the tough guy role like he likes to, he usually gets his way. People bend. But it makes him very unpopular with the people in our own country that like niceness. They like the sweet version. They like the kind version, right? Like these are very popular values in our country today. So if he wants to be popular, he has to be soft. If he wants to be effective, he has to be tough, which means if the president wants to be effective, he's going to tick a lot of people off, which is very tough when you're hearing about him through the lens of those people that have been irritated.
The video saying, once these orders are done, there won't be any more orders. This is the last deal. This is the final flurry before the factory shuts down, rushing to finish orders overnight, then pulling out when the business ends. After the U.S. announced the 34% tariff increase on Chinese goods, the People's Daily published a series of articles over 3 days, strongly criticizing the U.S.'s unilateral abuse of reciprocal tariffs, while stating the sky will not fall. However, it's clear that Chinese industry is feeling pessimistic. Reports from Chinese media indicate that Chinese manufacturers, foreign trade businesses, third-party intermediaries, and U.S. buyers are all struggling in this tariff battle. Some are reworking their costs overnight and engaging in price wars. Others are changing product specifications and shipping methods, while some are rushing to fulfill orders in an attempt to minimize losses before the new tariffs take effect. One foreign trade owner said, "No matter what, with these tariff hikes, the biggest losers are the business people." Mr. Zhu, an e-commerce entrepreneur from Jiangsu, told Radio Free Asia that the U.S.'s high tariffs on China will lead to the collapse of many e-commerce businesses. He said, "We are definitely affected. The impact is huge, and there's basically no profit left. We just can't keep doing business. Many e-commerce businesses in Jiangsu and Guangdong can't operate anymore. Everyone's in poverty now. The time of hunger and instability is coming. Just the other day, I met an elderly man in his 80s who was cursing the leaders, saying they've ruined this country. Our foreign policy is surrounded on all sides, and no country is engaging with China normally anymore." Veteran media figure Mr. Ge believes that the differences between China and the U.S. are not just about tariffs, and that Trump's tariff hikes are aimed at countries around the world. He points out that China's trade surplus with the U.S. nearly reached $300 billion last year, something President Trump greatly dislikes. He added that U.S.-Vietnam trade can be resolved through negotiations between the leaders of the countries, including lowering tariffs on Vietnamese products entering the U.S. But this is not the case for China. He said, "In comparison, the trade war is definitely more disadvantageous for China because China depends heavily on the U.S. market. The U.S. itself is a huge market. The key issue is that after China made the first move, no other countries followed, which is probably the most troublesome problem for China. If Vietnam successfully negotiates with the U.S. and benefits from it, it will attract many other countries to follow suit and negotiate as well." The People's Daily, the CCP's official paper, warned in a commentary that the U.S.'s actions will ultimately lead to a self-destructive cycle for the U.S. Australian scholar Li Yuanhua stated that while the U.S. will temporarily be affected, American society's ability to withstand shocks is relatively greater than China's. He said, "If life in China were to regress decades, could the Chinese people endure it? Can the CCP handle the growing public discontent? The CCP doesn't have many cards to play. When it collapses, it will likely not be in a rational way, and it won't be due to a desire to solve problems." In a rare move, there has been criticism within China against the CCP's countermeasures against the U.S. He Bin, former deputy director of the Public Policy Research Center at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, recently posted on social media. He said the CCP's countermeasures are entirely wrong. He made a comparison. The tariffs are like, if you hit your wife, I'll hit my wife. He further pointed out, the US raising tariffs is like shooting yourself in the foot, and we should not shoot ourselves in the foot as well. He believes the correct countermeasure strategy is not to retaliate tit for tat, but to adopt a policy of comprehensive economic openness, implementing unilateral zero tariffs on all imported goods from other countries. Chinese economist Fu Peng believes that Trump's reciprocal tariffs are like a buyer gathering supplies for negotiation. If suppliers refuse to negotiate, it's like abandoning their chance to bid, which will exclude them from the supply chain. Fu Peng's comments are suspected to have been deleted. Chinese financial website Yicai cited analysis from Gao Ruidong, chief economist at Everbright Securities. He said that the current China-US trade friction is gradually extending into the fields of technology and finance. If negotiations continue to be blocked, the decoupling in these areas could further intensify. By May or June, the decoupling of technology and finance between China and the U.S.
All right. Some really good points here as well. I thought this was good to share, and here's why. We hear a lot in the U.S. media about the impact that the tariffs are going to have on the U.S. economy. Primarily, things are going to cost more. We already have inflation. Things already suck. They're about to suck harder. Nobody is contesting that. It's all actually valid points. My problem is it's the only thing we're hearing. We're not hearing about the fact that the same is true for China. And I don't know that they're in as strong of a position as we are. America has the ability, due to our large amount of natural resources, the population we have that's overall a little bit more robust, and our intellectual prowess, to create a lot of different kinds of jobs that we can offer to other parts of the country. I'm not an expert in this, but from the commentary that I've been hearing, China doesn't have as much flexibility or diversity. They pretty much make stuff, manufacture it, and send it to other countries to consume. Do they consume some of their own stuff? Yes. And this is the argument I keep hearing made. David, they're just going to send it to other countries instead of the US, and they're going to consume it themselves. I just don't understand the logic in that. They're already consuming it themselves. They're going to consume more. Their government's going to tell their people to just spend more money. And where's the money going to come from to buy the stuff when they're losing their jobs? And as they're losing their jobs, and now they're all, like I said earlier, going for other jobs in the same industry that then lower the wages they pay, they have less money to spend. How do they buy more stuff? It's going to be the opposite. They're going to do what we would do. They're going to go into a recession. They're going to spend less money. They're going to consume less things. It's going to put more pressure on the fact that they already have too many factories and not enough stuff to make. Like they could be in a worse position than we are in a lot of ways. And for all the people that are just scared and afraid and thinking that we're going to go to war, I don't know that that's the most logical response to take here. Is it going to be hard for us? Yeah. Is it going to be harder for them? Probably. I don't know that they have as many cards to play as what we do. Everyone, remember this. We can start manufacturing here, okay? We can adapt. We can stop buying stuff from other places. We can make stuff here. It'll be more expensive, but we can do it. They don't have another thing to adapt to. They can't start manufacturing like we can. They're already manufacturing. They're just basically like drug dealers that just keep selling drugs to America. And if we say that drugs can't get in anymore, who do you sell them to? There's only so many people around. That might not be the best analogy, but it does still hit the point that we might not be in as bad of a situation as the other side is. The last video that I have for you, before I let you go, I thought it talks about one of the things that would hurt the U.S. economy, and that is the entertainment industry.
Some of the biggest American movies of all time.
Whatever it takes.
Huge hits at the box office in the U.S. and fans flooding theaters worldwide. What do they have in common? China, driving those ticket sales higher. But as the growing tariff tit for tat between the U.S. and China shows no signs of slowing down, Beijing's going beyond cash, now targeting culture and going after one of America's most premier exports, Hollywood. The China Film Administration, the government body that regulates movie releases, announcing today it's reducing U.S. film imports, though it's unclear what the drop will be from the 34 movies the country typically allows.
Okay, another thing. They stopped bringing in American movies because they're tariffing it. Are their own people going to like that? Would you be excited if like your favorite show became more expensive to watch because your leader wouldn't go negotiate with the other side? If you're like, you can't watch Friends anymore, or The Office is more expensive or something. I don't imagine that this is going to be popular with the Chinese people.
China can't afford not to match what he's doing, can't be seen to be weak.
Trump brushing off the move.
I think I've heard of worse things.
Tracking China's relationship with Hollywood has long been like following a complicated script. U.S. studios battle to get their movies approved to be released in China, the world's second largest movie market. You see the numbers, over $8 billion a year here versus more than $5 billion there last year. Some going so far to compromise the art with the country's censorship laws, like in Top Gun Maverick, who initially scrubbed out a Taiwanese flag patch in a 2019 trailer, reversed after backlash, costing the movie the Chinese market, even as it's made more than $1 billion globally. I am pretty despicable. Or even in Minions: Rise of the Gru, produced by our parent company, NBC Universal, a whole new ending edited just for the Chinese market. But American studios often reaped the rewards. In 2019, Avengers Endgame, the second highest grossing movie ever, saw $600 million of its nearly $3 billion box office sales coming from China. But as relations have frayed, so has Hollywood's presence in Beijing.
If you look at the more recent developments, post-COVID, for example, you see that the China market is simply not there.
Absolutely. The current #1 hit here in the U.S., a Minecraft movie. $314 million worldwide, but only $14 million in China. Chinese filmgoers now seem to want to see films that celebrate their own country and domestic production. Take Niza 2, the animated film earning over $1 billion, the first non-Hollywood film to break that mark in China, now threatening the overall box office record for any movie in any language. Experts say the combination of reducing American films and the ongoing trade war sparked by President Trump could lead to a lasting cultural shift.
If under the current situation with the tariffs, if you go to a theater to see an American film, you're seen as not patriotic.
While Hollywood has lost some influence in Beijing, movies there can still bring in big money. And as the industry is still recovering from the pandemic and dual labor strikes, curbing U.S. film imports could mean a potential loss in revenue from future releases like Superman, raising questions about whether losing a once prized market could close the curtain on Hollywood's high-dollar success. I spoke to a Hollywood executive just moments ago, and although she didn't want to be named publicly, she did have a lot to say. And she said, do not underestimate the impact that China has on the global box office, that film executives and people who are making the decisions as to what films to make, these big blockbusters, that it does matter that China is going to reduce the amount of American films that they are importing into the country amid all of this turmoil that's happening with the tariffs under Trump. And that although Trump, as of right now, is dismissing China's response to this, she said that, look, when you're looking at your favorite films, you might not see as many of these big blockbusters in the future because they're expensive to make and they rely on that global box office footprint to help make their money back because they're not always making it all back here in the United States. They really rely on that global income that the movies are making. So again, if you are a fan of these big Hollywood blockbusters, it does impact you.
Chloe Malas, thank you.
All right, there you have it. America is potentially devastating the Chinese manufacturing industry, which is where a ton of their jobs are. And they're threatening to import less of our movies from Hollywood, which I would probably argue a very big chunk of America already is not super supportive of the stuff that's coming out of there. So who knows how things are going to shake out. Personally, I think it's going to be a big hullabaloo about nothing. I think it's another typical thing where mainstream media is trying to get everyone to be afraid of the president and convincing you that he's going to send the world into war and shock. And what's going to happen is they're going to come, they're going to renegotiate with us. They're going to drop the tariffs if they've had on us unfairly, just like he said. I'm doing the thing he does right now with his hands. It was big. It was real big. It was monster, just like I'm going to do bigly things. And in the end of the day, we're going to be able to start manufacturing things in America. I wouldn't be surprised if you start seeing the president giving credits to companies that start businesses that are manufacturing and decrease taxes from some of the money that we're making from the countries that don't negotiate with us. That being said, I don't know if it's as bad as you're hearing out there. So hang tight, hold tight, hang in there. Things are probably going to get better. Now, if you're somebody who has been shaken by this news, if you're afraid, if you're feeling despair and worry and fear, I've got good news for you. There's more to life than just making money and being comfortable. And where you go when you die is actually something to really, really give a considerable amount of thought. If you're somebody who wants to recommit to God, take your relationship with God more serious, or just learn what that even means, DM me the word faith on Instagram or send me a message by any other means, and I'll get you a link to a group I'm going to be starting. It's called Spartan League. That's the logo right here on my mic stand, and it's for a group of people that are going to be helping each other on the journey and joining me in developing a better relationship with God. Would love to hear from you. Thanks for signing up. Make sure you subscribe to the channel to get more live updates every single day. I got to go. I got a webinar coming up right now for people that want to talk more about tariffs and how it's been affecting their life and their emotions and their moods and their worries and their fears and all kinds of other stuff. So I will see you guys tomorrow.